Every fee, every form, every fine, it all adds up. From taxes on dating app to prison miscarriage reports, this week's bills prove one thing. Washington lawmakers are getting creative and pretty expensive. Welcome to the Evergreen Report. I'm your host, Jay, where we bring Olympia home and tell it like it is. So, policy with a price tag, public good or government overreach? Great question. And we're going to talk about that today. We got lots of very interesting bills to talk about that I don't really think anyone else is covering. So this is going to be a half hour of bills that you may not know about. And I definitely want to hear from you if you agree or if you disagree on these bills. So the first story that we're going to get into is Senate Bill 5093. So this bill is called the Dignity in Pregnancy Loss Act. This bill aims to protect the dignity and privacy of individuals experiencing pregnancy loss by updating Washington laws surrounding death investigations and reporting. It does by removing coroners and medical examiners' jurisdiction over deaths caused by known or suspected abortions, premature births, or stillbirths, repealing the crimes of concealing a birth, a statute dating back to 1909, requiring prisons and private detention centers to report miscarriage and stillbirth annually to the Department of Health without identifying information. So, what does this all mean? Well, let's look at the local impact. For patients and families, it reduces the fear of legal consequences and invasive investigations following traumatic pregnancy loss. For coroners and medical examiners, it clarifies that they no longer have jurisdiction over these specific kinds of losses unless they involve violence, suspicious circumstances, or unlawful conduct. For prisons and detention centers, adds an annual reporting requirement related to miscarriage and stillbirth outcome. So, again, this bill is rather confusing and what it all means. And it's really hard to break down a bill like this because it's such a sensitive subject. And I don't I don't mind hurting people's feelings, but it may limit investigations in rare cases of abuse, coercion, or criminal action. So if there was like rape or incest or something and there was an abortion, it may limit those investigations. This is seen as part of a national trend to remove legal scrutiny from pregnancy loss and abortion related outcomes. Again, it's still one of those things that's like I get the point of it. I think it's more of a pushback against the Roe v. Wade to have like a consequence free and a conscious free like abortion, if you will. I think it does do a good job of protecting those stillbirth mothers and the the traumatic losses, premature birth, stillbirth. Those things I think should be protected, but they're classified different anyways. So it's still stuck either way. So it repeals the concealing birth statute that removes a potential check on infant side. While rare, some fear this could be used to hide evidence of wrongdoing, limits the ability of coroners to investigate possible illegal abortions or maternal deaths. This bill may be part of a broader political shift to shield abortion-related events from public scrutiny rather than assuring accountability. Prison reporting requirements may open the door to more state-mandated data collection, which critics say could be costly and vague. And it could. I mean, you let them in for this. What else do you let them in for? So this feels really tricky. It has some good. Depends. It really depends on where your stance comes down on abortion. I think abortion shouldn't be a thing unless it's for rape, incest, or life of the mother. Are the only three reasons that it should happen. Those are the only three exceptions to me personally when it comes to these things. So this bill trying to like hide it and not have it investigated and things like that, I think it hurt a lot more than it help. But I'm sure there's those that believe, oh yeah, this helped just fine. This will be just good. There's no like really financial impact, and common sense here would say that everyone deserves dignity in grief, but removing oversight without adding safeguards could backfire. And that's exactly what this bill would do. It would kind of remove a lot of those safeguards. It would remove, people's ability to investigate, see what the heck went on here. This looks fishy, and be able to, have accountability. Therefore, after. That's our top story of the day is Senate Bill 5093. Go ahead and go over to ledge.wa.gov and you can type in 5093 into the search bar and you'll be able to pop this up, whether you support it or don't support it. Okay, moving on. The health and justice bills are taking the table this week in legislative session. That's a hard word for me to say. So the House Bill 1422 makes several technical and regulatory changes to Washington's statewide drug take-back program, including modifying Department of Health fee and enforcement authorities, revising reporting requirements and performance benchmarks for program operators, creating standards for parity between multiple operators in the state, revisiting how funds in the secure drug take-back account may be used, setting clear expectations around program access, collection amounts, and public education. So that's kind of what the bill is. So it expands more state auditing, it performance standards and equity requirements, The biggest concern with this bill overall is that it's just more bureaucracy and less innovation. It's more oversight and less, innovation here to actually, you know, get the drugs off the street and whatnot. It does enhance program accountability and equity. It requires that all approved program operators select approximately the same volume of returned drugs, which is fine. That is what it is. The Department of Health is allowed to recover administrative enforcement and oversight costs, but is subject to a 10% cap of the highest reported operator expenditures, keeping costs predictable. So they're able to recover some of the costs of operational needs, which is nice. This has, of course, some public health goals tied to it, but I don't see it how it actually helps reduce opioids and preventing poisoning and protecting people in general. And it removes guardrails on the fee cap. So earlier drafts allowed DOH to collect uncapped fees, with all the final version reinstated the 10% cap. Stakeholders fear future attempts to remove that protection. So we need to codify stronger language for future fee increases. And for overreach here, there's a lot of overreach. It adds unnecessary burdens like annual performance parity, budget targets, and duplicative reporting. So we need to simplify this process, preserve the accountability, and especially for small operators with limited capacity. There's no real financial impact to this. There's nothing required except for recovering the cost through the operator fee, which may bring more compliance and operating costs. So this bill is designed to, tighten program oversight to ensure no operator can underperform or underinvest. But increased complexity and state power must be balancing fairness and flexibility. And then long-term transparency and efficiency, not bureaucracy, should guide public health programs. So that's kind of where this bill's at. It's very interesting. One, that it just makes the drug take it back program more bureaucratic and less actually innovative and helping the people that it's there to help. Let's see. So there's a lot of themes today around if these are public good or government overreach. A lot of these policies that we're talking about today have a price tag, especially these next two. So brace yourselves. House Bill 1484, harsher sentences for rape resulting in pregnancy, which on the surface sounds really good, but I want to break it down. I love how on Google Docs there's this that feature of tabs and stuff, so you set them up, just click right to where you want to go. So this is expanding exceptional sentences for rape-related pregnancies, and I've been talking about this a lot lately because the sentences that are being handed down by local jurisdiction on sexual offenders is not enough at all. Actually, I finally came to the conclusion that if someone commits sex crimes against someone, that person's life has changed forever, or whatever, especially against children, that person's life has changed forever. Why doesn't the offender also face a life sentence? Just my thought there. So House Bill 1484 modifies Washington's Sentencing Reform Act to allow courts to impose harsher sentences for rape convictions that result in pregnancy, regardless of the victim's age. Previously, the aggravating factor only applied when the victim was a minor. So this adds a new aggravating sentencing factor for rape that result in pregnancy, whether the whether the victim is a child or an adult. Not whether the child is a child or not, whether the victim is a child or an adult. So the impact of this is actually kind of cool here, because yes, we need more harsher penalties for these crimes and better clarification for when these things happen. But also at the same time, like, judges already are able to either exceed or lessen the sentence kind of based on their discretion. So they can give a sentence over what's expected, or they can give one that's well under if they want, or somewhere in between that fits what they want to do. So we do have a lot of soft on crime judges, but just something to keep in mind here as well. Survivors of rape who become pregnant will now have their cases treated with a greater legal severity, with courts able to impose longer than standard sentences. That's the right phrasing. They're able to give longer than standard or shorter than standard sentences. Prosecutors will have more tools to argue for justice in severe cases, and victims may feel more supported in the legal system. There's no direct cost to counties, or courts, but it could result in longer incarceration periods for convicted offenders. Do we really want these people on the streets if they're raping and getting girls pregnant, things like that? I don't think so. I think they should be given life sentences and kept off the streets forever, and ever and ever and ever, because they're altering lives, right? They're severely altering lives here, and their life should also be severely altered. I think anything less than life sentence is a slap on the wrist for these individuals, for these men. So there's some positive aspects to this bill, like I'm saying here. Recognize the extraordinary trauma and lifelong consequences of pregnancies caused by rape, extending protections to adult victims, not just minors. It sends a strong message that the state considers these cases especially severe and worthy of exceptional sentencing. Expands prosecutorial tools without creating new crimes. Rather than altering existing criminal definitions, it modifies sentencing authority, giving judges more flexibility in severe cases. Because not only was that young woman raped, that girl raped in this instance, but she's also pregnant. So now she's facing living with the trauma from the rape, and she's also facing the trauma of most likely going through an abortion as well, and experience both things within a short period of time of each other. And that's a lot. That's life altering. And these men should also have their life altered as well. There is some concern, of course, with all bills leads to concern. Overall, I think this is a decent bill. It's acceptable sentence, quote unquote, provisions are already subjective and may vary by judge. I mean, of course, that's how it already is. So it could lead to inconsistent application. So they will, of course, need more guidance and training on this for what it looks like. There's no built-in review mechanism, so courts could over rely on the provision and underuse it due to uncertainty. So this requires proper training and implementation. That's the biggest question here. It just has to be implemented correctly. There's no financial impact, and common sense here would say the trauma of rape is compounded by pregnancy. The bill lets courts acknowledge that. This is not about redefining rape laws. It's about making sure that penalty fits the full scope of harm. Judges should use this power carefully, and data should be tracked for fairness. So we got that one, and now let's jump into House Bill 1028, which will. There's a theme. A lot of these are all related to like children and violence, domestic violence, assault, things like that. A lot of the bills today. I'm not sure how all those ended up on the same docket for the session this week, but it did. So House Bill 1028, expanding support for children exposed to violence. So this bill updates the definition and role of Children's Advocacy Centers, so CACs, in Washington to explicitly include support for children exposed to violence, not just abuse. It also allows forensic interviews, recordings from closed cases to be used for confidential peer review, ensures child forensic interviews follow updated, trauma-informed, and culturally responsive practices, repeals outdated definitions, and strengthens protocols for inter-agency collaboration in abuse and violence cases. This improves trauma-informed care. It will also modernize forensic interviewing standards and encourages multidisciplinary collaboration. So some good things here overall when it comes to that perspective of protecting the kids, allowing for more collaboration, and of course modernizing the forensic interviews as well. Those things are pretty outdated. If you know, you know, and they definitely could use some updating. So I think on the surface this feels really good, but let's see what are red flags. Because there's red flags with every bill, right? And no matter how good, how sweet it sounds, there may be things. Of course, privacy and consent safeguards must be ironclad. We have to ensure confidentiality and parental consent procedures, but, that's just simply you could codify that with protections, audit protections, and require annual report operation impacts on CACs. So they may need more funding and staff trainings to support this expanded responsibility. So they would most likely need to provide grants for smaller rural CACs to meet these higher standards. But overall, there's not really anything bad coming with this bill. It allows for the review of these interviews, and there's no money included, but the CACs will need it for the training. There are still some privacy and funding gaps included in all this. But overall, my perspective, common sense would say that modernizing this advocacy law to include witnesses of violence is overdue. Right now, it doesn't include the witnesses of violence in these laws, in these cases. So for child experiences of violence and there's witnesses, they don't have any say. It doesn't include them. It just includes the offender and the child, not anyone who may have witnessed. Peer review improves practice, but must protect families' privacy. Yes, I think peer review is good to have multiple more eyes on these forensic interviews, a jury, things like that, to be able to understand and kind of, provide extra perspectives that may not be being given at all. The state should fund what it mandates, especially in small and rural communities. I mean, that's just common sense, is that if we're going to fund it, if we're going to create something like this, it needs to be funded in all across the state and not leave anyone at a disadvantage. Because especially those small and rural communities, that's where it happens the most. We got to make sure we're trying to, not let that happen. Okay, so moving back to 1498, I mentioned that earlier. So now moving into the tax trap, there's some trappy tax bills here. And I wanted to talk about them because two of them are, this first one's kind of hilarious. So if you like marriage and you're a supporter of marriage and you want to get married in Washington State, well, how about I make it cost more for you? Or saying Democrats want the bill. But this money, don't worry, it's going to go to creating a statewide DV response grant program by charging people who want to get married. So if you want to get married, the extra fees that are going to come with it are going to go to creating this DV response program. So marriages are now creating a fund to respond to domestic violence, which those two things don't seem to go hand in hand. It's like, hey, just so you're getting married, you're going to have to pay the domestic violence response fee. But let's talk about it a little bit more. So this creates a domestic violence co-responder account. And as I've talked about before, this bill, when there's a new account created, if it's not already created or is going to be created, what the money is exactly going to go for, the transparency there, I don't like it. It's fishy. It doesn't make sense. It should just go to the general fund if they're going to do it and, create more revenue. But they're finding everything they can. Last episode, we talked about all the ways they're taxing the fund out of Washington State. And here's yet another example. Well, two more examples coming up. But this one's the first one. So this bill creates a domestic violence co-responder account funded by a $100 fee increase on marriage licenses and establishes a DV co-responder grant program managed by the Office of Crime Victim Advocacy, so the OCVA. The program will support cities and counties in setting up co-responder programs which pair domestic violence victims with law enforcement officers at the scene of domestic violence incidents to provide support, resources, and connections and care navigation. So the marriage license applicants will pay an additional $100 in fees, increasing the cost of marriage licenses to $136 to $172, depending on where you live. Revenue from the fee will be used exclusively for the co-responder programs across Washington, funding new programs in local jurisdictions and offering training and technical assistance and help local governments meet demand. Smaller jurisdictions or those without established programs may receive matching grants to develop co-responder programs, providing more holistic, victim-centered responses to domestic violence situations. So on the surface, the purpose of this, of the accounts and whatnot, sounds fine, right? But don't we have other ways that we could, fund something like this? Do we really need to tax and put an extra $100 on marriage licenses? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. Co-responder programs provide immediate assistance to victims during critical incidents, improving outcomes for families affected by violence. To support families, children, and victims by offering resource connection, legal advocacy, and care navigation at the scene. It also empowers law enforcement, benefit from mental health experience, expertise, and victim advocacy provided by co-responders, leading to safer and more effective responses in DV calls. It also helps reduce re-victimization and improves long-term victim safety. But this is, of course, doesn't come without the drawbacks as well. So there's drawbacks on this as well. Potential for increased fees on low-income individuals. So the $100 fee on marriage licenses could be a burden for low-income couples already facing financial challenges. There needs to be, of course, income-based exceptions for those who would qualify. This $100 is a lot. If you're just trying to get married because you love the person, and you want to get married, start a family, because that's right by, the Bible and whatnot, then the extra $100 can really strain and put some financial burden to start out this process. I think it would turn away some eloping, but at the same time, marriage is good and we need to encourage it. This de-incentivizes marriage in a really weird roundabout way because you're putting more fees and strings attached to being able to get married and being able to get a marriage license, so you have to get married. So if you're doing this, you're essentially, breaking up marriage and putting more barriers of entry into it, which then continues to encourage, non-traditional families, which continues to encourage, reliance on government to help raise children, welfare, WIC, TANF, and all these other programs to support families and whatnot, because we can't get married, too expensive, and then the family dissolves and we're back to where we started. And so this is a really sad thing here if we're looking strictly from like a biblical perspective here, because marriage is ordained of God, and there shouldn't be so many more fees in place, especially a $100 increase going from $36 to $136. Like, that's insane. And people don't know about this. So if you're planning a wedding, make sure that you're aware, first and foremost. But also, this isn't right to do this to the family. This isn't right to do to couples. This isn't right to do to those who want to get married and those who are trying to, take that step the right way and do things the right way to then have a family then after. It creates more of those barriers and whatnot and makes things harder. So it's quite sad. It's quite sad that this is a hidden tax, a hidden fee. And we don't know we know exactly what the funds are going to be for in theory, but there's no proof that these will actually move into doing that. How are they going to be audited? How are they going to be maintained? And what is actually the long-term impact of this? Where's the study? Where's the evidence? It's all in theory. It's going to reduce it. How is it going to reduce it? There's no evidence. It's not an evidence-based bill. There's no evidence backing this bill here. Which is something like this would 100% need an evidence-based bill. If you're going to charge people $100 extra to get married, it needs to be there and needs some evidence behind it. That's just my thought. That's common sense, right? I think we could explore better alternative revenue sources for these programs, such as reallocating existing funds or creating a dedicated state fund. Could be a better long-term solution. I think that this doesn't really go towards helping close any funding gap, and it's just kind of there to be there. Uh, but yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I don't love this bill. I think this is just another way that the government tried to say we hate marriage. We don't want you guys to get married. We don't want you to have families, and we're going to create more barriers to doing that. Let's see, House Bill 2071. So let me ask you, how many of you guys are on dating app? Let me know in the comments. I don't know. Um, how about a extra dollar monthly tax per Washington resident who uses an online dating application, free or paid, with the goal of generating funding for domestic violence intervention services? So, two bills, two taxes for domestic violence services. If we have this big of a need for domestic violence, why aren't we already funding it and taking care of the problem? Why are we? Oh yeah, we're finally going to take care of domestic violence by creating two tax, not one but two taxes on this. So this applies to dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, all things used by residents in Washington State. $1 per user per month tax is levied on the corporate owner of the platform, not the individual user. So if you like using them, let's say there's a couple million people, that's a couple $1,000,000 on the platform. Those costs will 100% be passed on to you. There'll be more paywalls designed for Washington State residents and whatnot to make it so you only get less free access, and there's more paywalls, more pay, which will mean less users, or they'll just say you live in Washington, you can't download this app. So this could be good if it reduces the services, pass the cost to users to force you out of your comfort zone to go and talk to people and to go and meet people in a more natural and organic way through church or through talking to them at a restaurant or things like that, whichever that may be. So it could be good. There could be some good here. This will also the funds will also go to the DV service account, which may be used for intervention programs and victim support, kind of like we were just talking about. Accounts inactive for 24 months are considered abandoned or are not subject to taxation. The Department of Revenue is responsible for rulemaking and enforcement. So this goes into effect January 1st, 2026, if passed. There's no direct tax burden on users, but the cost is going to come to you through the app services and whatnot. The apps are getting created. So if you're in Washington, of course you have your location. It's going to be hard for you to spoof that, and they're going to realize that, hey, we're going to pay $1 for this, and you're going to get less access for you, because that's going to be, less money for us. So this is a backdoor cost to you as the consumer of these things. So you ultimately will pay more, higher subscription fees, lost features, just less access to these apps that you currently use. But if you're using them, can you just find something else to use, or not do it, or maybe get out there into the world, touch some grass, go meet some people? It may just be the better solution overall, and just learn how to actually talk to people. Would be great. If you want to practice, come on my podcast. That's not an offer. I'm not trying to offer you dating advice or anything here on the podcast. But if you're needing help with speaking or things like that, I think a podcast is a great place to start. Even if no one ever hears it, record it for yourself, do it for yourself. Learn how different ways to communicate. Start using your voice, not your thumbs, to communicate. You have a voice in your head, go ahead and use it out through your mouth, not just through your fingertips. All right, social media tax to fund youth behavioral health services. On the surface, for me, I work in behavioral health. This bill looks great. So what is this one? It applies to TikTok, Meta, Snapchat, and YouTube. Funds go to behavioral health services for youth under 25. 38. This bill imposes a new 0.4% B&O tax on social media companies operating in Washington State, with all revenue directed into a newly created behavioral health account. So a newly created behavioral health account, which again, I stand by that. If it's a new account that's being created, being added, then we have no guarantee that this is going to happen, or these funds are actually going to be allocated properly and used properly. The tax is designed to fund behavioral health programs for children and young adults aged 0 to 25, including telehealth, care coordination, and pilot services through the Healthcare Authority. So the Washington State youth and families gain access to expanded behavioral health services, including early intervention and telehealth tools. Tech companies like Meta, TikTok, and X, which profit from Washington-based user activity, will now be taxed on gross advertising and user interaction revenue. Small nonprofits, 501(c)(3)s, are exempt, as are services like email, gaming, research, and messaging apps. Services like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok will likely be subject to tax. So this is a smart source for revenue. Social media gains giants profit off user engagement, and studies show strong correlations between excessive use and declining youth mental health. So it's kind of a, if some accountability here being pushed, which isn't the worst thing. This uses the tech well to address a problem partially fueled by their platform. It's a dedicated mental health investment, so revenue is earmarked. So this is good. Not being dumped to the general fund for every dollar must go to mental health programs for people under 25. Funds telehealth, behavioral health, a parental prenatal through age 25 plan, and staffing in the governor's office for youth behavioral oversight. Best part I don't love is these positions because they're going to be high paid, they're going to be very well paid to create this special office and whatnot, and I don't see that. There's no sunset clause or review at this at all to review any of the things here. So they may pass the tax costs on to advertisers or users. So if there are advertisers that aren't 501, 503Cs, so nonprofit, just small businesses looking to advertise, taxes are going to hurt you because you're going to have to pay more for your advertisement. We're gonna have to monitor price hikes, and there's gonna need to be transparency from these companies operating in the state. The tax is permanent and not subject to a regular review, unlike most tax preferences. So it's kind of a permanent thing. So we need to add a sunset clause or a 5-year review on this one to see, hey, we put this in place, is it actually working? Because these taxes without a sunset clause, that's the ones that they just, raise and raise and raise and raise, which will ultimately drive this tech out of Washington State. If you like using those things here in Washington, make your voices heard on this and say, hey, this needs to have something so it's reviewed annually and not just, open door, because these, as it raises from 0.4%, that then becomes 1.4%, 2.4, 3.4, 4.4, and just increases all willy-nilly whenever they feel like increasing this tax. So this is expected to raise tens of millions annually with the dedicated spending. There's no new cost to small nonprofits or non-social media platforms like messaging, gaming, or academic tools. So some good things here, some good things. This does tie back to a growing problem, the youth mental health, and one of its drivers. So it does, policy-backed funding plan. It's really cool here. Overall, I do support this, and I think it's a good place to be. Let's jump into housing reform that actually makes sense. So one bill by my local representative, April Connors, is actually sponsoring this bill. And I think it's one of the better bills on the session. So before I get into this one, because this one's really cool, really important, but I also just want to briefly hit these other bills real quick about education and career, some real reform and not just talk. So remote testing for online students beginning in 2027. So this is House Bill 1079, which is remote testing for online school students, begins in 2027. Students can take standardized tests from home, but does increase security concerns. Cheating risk is real. It needs tight tech, accountability. And then if these are standardized tests, they need to be done in a standardized setting, I think is the biggest argument against that. 1414, another bill sponsored by April Connors here, Representative Connors. CTE, career access, and paid work for teens. This tackles the red tapes that block teens from working even after career training. This adds labor and business to the conversation, so those who are already running the business in the career technology fields that can hire these youth who've already gone through some training, whether like TriTech or something, or very similar organizations. I already gave them some skilled training and whatnot. Helps them get right into it. Working with those businesses directly. This lets students work safely, so we have to move fast to avoid wasting time and get those people to the table. I think that's a really important part of all this here for House Bill 1722. But I am in support of it. I think it is a good bill. It gets our youth working. So overall, good. It's good. It's good. Let me see if there's anything I do want to bring up about it, because there's always bad. There's safety and opportunity tensions. There's a delicate balance between giving students hands-on experience and ensuring they're not put in unsafe work environment, whether that's roofing, meat processing, excavations. So again, make sure there's a careful alignment is really important here. With student learner exemptions already authorized by LNI, ensuring proper supervision and training. There is a risk of some bureaucratic gridlock here. The task force could become bogged down by interagency conflict, especially where OSFI, LNI, and federal labor laws intersect. So this is going to require some clear timelines and deliverables from each agency involved with public transparency. My coffee's cold. But overall, this bill does train students for real jobs, and they should be allowed to take them. Agency must coordinate between themselves better, or we risk wasting valuable training on red tape, and workforce access must be paired with strong safety and mentorship framework. So it gives these kids good work, puts them right into the work field, lets them start producing, lets them start paying taxes, lets them start earning, and also help contributing to the society as a whole, I think this is also really good. In addition to that comes House Bill 1722, which would expand EMT and fire training to high school students. So with the CTE programs, this would allow EMT and fire service training at 16 through approved CTE programs. Great for workforce pipelines, but it does need strong safety protocols and instructor oversight. But overall, this is really cool. It requires the state fire marshal to review and report on age restrictions for fire training programs and suggest reforms to expand youth access. I think there's a lot of things that, these youth could do in terms of fire training and EMT training, which could be really, really good for them. And it would fill this pipeline like crazy. I think an expansion on this bill in the future would be to also include police cadet training, these public services training, more from firefighters, EMTs, police officers, and just, expand this bill to more of the CTE program. So I think that's really cool. These bills are really cool. I support both of them. I will call it like it is. If I didn't support it, I wouldn't support it. But I do support these. There's no direct cost. These have, they just really need proper oversight. With proper oversight, it's a no-brainer. So they just need proper oversight. With that, you really have my full support. So just amend it, and you have my full support here. So back to where I was talking about housing that actually makes sense. So finally, a housing bill that actually makes sense. This one actually has bipartisan support, and currently, I believe, is just waiting the governor's signature to be passed into law. So I've covered this actually on the Evergreen Local, but I want to cover it again here just because it's one of those bills that really relates to both shows that I really want to get into here, even though I'm running a bit over time, but that's okay. 1191, converting manufactured homes into real property for cooperative residents. So House Bill 1191 allows owners of manufactured homes or mobile homes in cooperatively owned communities to eliminate their vehicle title and have the home legally recognized as real property. So yeah, currently, and I didn't know this, manufactured homes and mobile homes actually hold a vehicle title, not a property title, which means they're subject to vehicle loans, which are high yielding, high interest loans in terms. So this applies to homes in stock cooperatives or limited equity housing cooperatives where the homeowner holds membership or shares in the community. This will then enable these residents to essentially re-qualify, but for traditional mortgage financing instead of these high interest loans, a personal property loan. So this will roughly impact 1,600 plus manufactured homes across Washington are part of these resident-owned cooperatives, and more could come in the future, and more are coming in the future. This bill enables homeowners to build equity and access lower interest mortgage products, increasing financial stability. Rural and low-income communities may see more cooperative housing development, thanks to improved access to financing tools like those supported by Fannie Mae. So green flags here, lots of green flags. Eliminating the title classifies the home as real property, qualifying the resident for lower cost long-term financing, which is great. Breaks the cycle of reliance on high interest short-term chattel loans, which is disproportionately impact working class families. Encourages more mobile home parks to convert to cooperatives as a proven modern for stabilizing affordable housing. And this aligns Washington with other states that offer title elimination for cooperative housing. The most interesting part of all this whole bill as a whole, is that it has bipartisan support. So it's really interesting that this bill has a bipartisan, reform as a part of it. Because typically both sides of the aisle in Olympia do not agree on anything. And even though they could have something simple like this to agree over, they typically won't. So I'm curious what it is about this bill because, researching it, looking through it, I don't really see too much bad. It could complicate the property tax system. It may shift them into a different property tax structure, which could affect county assessment. Once a home is converted into a real property, it's more difficult to move or retitle, possibly limiting future flexibility. This ensures homeowners are fully informed before applying for title elimination. So just, some very simple things are some very obvious loopholes here, but other than that, there's not much here. Overall, it's good. Um, it makes things a little bit more affordable, more fair, and this is something that Bob Ferguson is really about, is creating more home opportunity for those around the state. Here in the Tri-Cities, we're booming with housing being built, and so I think a bill like this will get more people out of short-term rentals and apartments, things like that, and more into those fully stable homes that are being built, the townhomes, the housing, structures that are going up all around the Tri-Cities. So really cool, really interesting. No cost. It'll build equity, promotes ownership. It's quietly one of the smartest housing bills this session. So with that, I want to know your thoughts on all these things, from the abortion bills to the DV bills and all of it. I want to know your thoughts. So drop them in the comments. Message me on Instagram or X at Evergreen Report on both Instagram and X. That's where I'm most active, and that's the only social media attached to the podcast. And of course, YouTube as well. You can just look up Evergreen Report. We'll pop up there. It's easy to find. It's the one with the tree in Washington State. Pretty obvious. So I want to know what you think. Like I said, should rape-related pregnancy bring enhanced sentencing? Should people pay more to get married or go hiking just to fund these state programs? And if you are curious, it was go hiking. That's to increase the Discover Pass cost. So that's what I'm curious. I want to know. And then should kids take tests at home, or does that undermine results? Which I personally think it does. I personally think it undermines results. If it's a standardized test, it needs to be standard everything. Standard pencil, standard test, standard location, standard environment. Everything's fair and on an even playing field. So again, drop your thoughts on X, Instagram. Your voice may be in the next episode. When lawmakers fund the right causes, right cause the wrong way. It's our job to ask better questions. Stay sharp, stay active, and stay loud. We'll see you next time right here on the Evergreen Report. And remember to follow at Evergreen RPT for real-time coverage. Contact your rep, especially on bills you feel extra passionate about, or go to ledge.wall.gov and you'll be able to type in any of these bills we covered in the search bar and put your comments in there as well and get a response from your representative. A lot of our representatives are really good at sending responses, and so it's really great to be able to engage with them. But anyways, until next time, right here on the Evergreen Report.